So in my last few videos, I've been exploring what happens if you pass away without having a will and what the consequences are, who inherits from you and crucially, who doesn't, basically. So today what I'd like to do is just look at the absolute worst case scenario and what would happen to you if you were kind of, on the wrong end of that, if you were the victim of that. So worst possible case scenario is you live with your partner, you've been together for donkey's years, but you depend financially on your partner. Your partner is the owner of the key assets, your home, your investments, your savings and all that sort of stuff. And they pass away and they haven't made a will. Now then, in that situation, the default position, as I've mentioned, is you technically get nothing at all automatically. So you're kind of left high and dry, potentially destitute, which is hideous, obviously, because other people will inherit. Yeah, fair enough, it will be your kids. But as I explained, in a situation where your kids are small, all of those assets that they've inherited will have to be put away until your kids are of age, and you can't access them for your own benefit and welfare. So that's a very difficult situation in itself. But if you were a couple living together and you didn't have kids, then it would be your partner's parents if they're still living, or siblings, or more distant relatives, but never you. So that's you left high and dry. Now, is there a solution? Well, yes, there is, to a degree. Okay, there is a law dating back to 1975 called the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependents Act, and what that basically says is that if you depend financially on somebody and have depended financially on them for at least a period of 2 years before they passed away, you can apply to the court to be reasonably provided for from that deceased person's estate. And if you make such an application, then absolutely what the court is going to do is going to assess what's reasonable for you in the general context. So what the court will look at is the size of the estate that's been left behind, the relative financial circumstances, wealth or poverty of yourself set against the beneficiaries who do actually inherit under these rules, and whether there are any other relevant circumstances that apply specifically to you and those people, including things like disabilities or other things that may have happened in the past that are directly relevant to this situation. So you're not going to inherit everything using this dependency claim. You're going to receive part of the estate, and you're going to receive enough for your maintenance, basically, without leaving the primary beneficiary completely short either. So yeah, it's not a complete solution, and it's absolutely not probably what your partner who's been providing for you would have wanted. Had your partner stopped and thought about it, they would have made a will to leave you, adequately provided for, and possibly leave you everything if you've built everything together over the years together. So not a complete solution at all, but it's a solution of sorts that will make sure that you're not left completely destitute. One massive caveat though is you've got to get moving. You've got to put your application in within 6 months after the grant of probate, or the grant of letters of administration, which is the without a will equivalent, is issued, which doesn't leave a lot of time for preparing and kind of sharing information with your opposing party and that sort of stuff. So I mean, yes, it is possible for you to apply for an extension retrospectively if you've come to this knowledge of this potential solution late. You can, if you've got a reasonable excuse, apply to be allowed to be considered, even though this 6 months has already passed. But it's very much at the discretion of the court. So, if this happens to you and you know about this solution, then the key advice is get some legal representation and advice as soon as you possibly can. Even though you're bereaved, even though you're going through a terrible time, it's important that you act quickly to protect yourself and to make sure that your practicalities and your body and soul needs are met as best as the law will allow. So lots of complicated issues to consider there, and lots of questions I'm sure that may be raised in your mind if you're potentially or actually affected by this scenario. So if that's the case, feel free to drop me an email, let me know what the problem is, ask your question. I'm always happy to receive your emails and always absolutely delighted to answer your questions. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.